I've often wondered what authority the President versus the Congress has in declaring war. And, you know, we go back to my memories back in 1964, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which catapulted us into the Vietnam War. And then, of course, more recently, Desert Storm, the Gulf, so-called Gulf War. And now there's a lot of saber rattling around the world. And I just wondered who had the authority. And I came across Dr. Westerfield's book entitled War Powers, the President, the Congress, and the Question of War. And he's with us today. We're really lucky to have someone so accomplished. I think he's already lived 2 or 3 lifetimes. He has a BBA and an MA from the University of Miami and a PhD from St. Louis University. He's been at Webster University for 25 years, teaching graduate school in the doctoral program. He was also the director of Webster University in London, England in 1989. He's a senior fellow of the National Center for Policy Analysis, which is a think tank out of Washington, D.C. and Dallas. He's been a visiting professor during summer terms to Austria, the Netherlands, the Republic of China, Holland, and England. He's published 6 books. He's written over 125 scholarly articles, professional papers, and professional presentations. He's the owner and CEO of Economic Consultants. He consults in statistics, econometrics, business strategy, economics of healthcare, intelligence, counterintelligence, and industrial security. And he's on the editorial board of 2 journals, 2 professional journals. I could go on, but he's quite an accomplished speaker, and he's going to talk to us today about the war powers. May I introduce Dr. Westerfield.
Thank you, President Watts, for your very gracious introduction. I'm just pleased to be here. So I welcome all of the honored guests, university faculty, friends of the university, and members of the community, honored guests. Boy, you have quite a distinguished group visiting you this morning. Seeing you eating your lunch there, I hope everyone's finished. I don't want to spoil your lunch, but it just reminded me of these 2 cannibals were eating a clown. And one turned to the other and says, "Hey, does this taste funny to you?" Well, I just, another piece of news, I guess it's local news, I'm not sure. Turned out that this guy was working in an upholstery factory and fell into one of the upholstery machines. He's fully recovered, though. This is scholarly humor. Interesting way. When what got me started off on this war powers thing, I've been practically all of my books, in fact, every single one of them really, have had a congressional overtone and a constitutional and legal overtone to them. And when I co-authored only one book, all the others I wrote by myself, but this one I co-authored with Congressman Tom Curtis from the 3rd District in St. Louis. Does anyone remember Tom Curtis? Yeah. Well, Tom's passed away, unfortunately, but lovely guy. Oh, man, you talk about a junkyard dog. He was. He was a real guardian of principle and a high principle person himself. He was on the Ways and Means Committee, and during the time that the the Democrats were in charge. He was a Republican, of course. But Jerry Ford was running for minority leader of the House. And so Tom said that he would chair the committee to get him elected minority leader. And sure enough, he was elected. So President Ford said, I owe you one. So when Tom and I were writing this book together, I said, Tom, you got to get somebody extremely prestigious now to write a foreword to the book where your buddies in Congress and, you know, just people will be impressed and buy the book. So he said, okay. He says, I got a guy that owes me a favor. I said, is that true? And he says, yeah. So he picked up the phone and called President Ford. Can you imagine? And they talked a while, and President Ford said he was busy with Betty in the clinic and just really had too many obligations. He says, but I tell you what, he says, my White House Chief of Staff and Secretary of Defense, he'll do whatever you ask. He'll return this favor. So Tom said, okay. So gosh, it wasn't but about 2 or 3 days, just out of the clear blue, got this phone call from Secretary Rumsfeld. He says, call me Don. He says, Don. He says, what is this favor you want from President Ford? And so I told him to write it for. Oh yeah, he said, no problem. So he wrote the foreword to my second book, and then we got acquainted really well. And so when it came, so I was talking with him one time, and he was telling me all these war stories, and I says, my gosh. I said, you really ought to be, we ought to be writing a book about this. And so, yeah, he said that wouldn't be bad. So I sent off to my publisher and wrote a thing. So they immediately sent a contract back with both of us, but he was too busy at the time to finish the whole thing. But he said, I tell you what, I'll write the foreword to it. And I said, wonderful. And he did. And the rest is history. The topic we have today, the war powers, it's both simple and complex. It just seems so crystal clear, but of course it depends on whether you're in Congress or whether you're sitting in the President's office. But they've been quibbling back and forth the division of power. And so that's the way this thing sits, is they're still now, this very day, quibbling about the power and who has the power to wage the war, who has the power to declare war, and so forth. To me, it's a clear issue, but there are a lot of constitutional and legal issues involved. Once you dig into them, then the thing clears up. But of course, two people can see an accident and they'll give you a different report, won't they? Yeah, you almost have, for every issue, as many opinions as there are people. So this is the way this thing works out between Congress and the President. This statement here by Jacob Javits, he was speaking, and this really is the whole basis from the book. Resolve that the committee to initiate an inquiry into the division of constitutional authority between the Congress and the President respecting military operations, the exercise of powers in the United States to what? To make war. Now, I wonder what that concept means, to make war. Does that mean to declare a war? Does that mean to fight the war? Does that mean to fund the war? Interesting, but that's what Javis was concerned with, and Congress was still fighting. Who has the power to make war? Well, we'll find out as this thing goes along here. The formal power struggle. First of all, we see the language that Javits had was to make war. But the Constitution itself gives it a little thing. First of all, Article 1, Section 8 says that Congress has the power to declare a war, and that has absolutely never been debated. I mean, there's been no question on that. It hadn't been contested. The second article gives of the Constitution gives the President the power to be Commander-in-Chief and to repel attacks. Well, Now then, we're beginning to see a little difference here. What does that mean, really? I guess I ask you the question, do you think the word make and declare carry war powers implications? I just wonder about that. Well, let's see. President George H.W. Bush, if you read my book, the very first opening little, I guess you call it the frontispiece of the book, George Bush has a statement. This is when he wrote a note to Congress, and you can see what he signed, the resolution authorizing the use of military force. As I made clear to the congressional leaders at the outset, my request for congressional support did not, and my signing this resolution does not constitute any change in the longstanding positions of the executive branch, and so forth. And so right here is kind of the crux of the thing. So Bush was not admitting that when he signed the resolution that he was yielding to the war powers. Now, how this whole thing really come to a head? We had a Gulf of Tonkin incident that was reported to have begun by attack by 3 North Vietnamese torpedo boats on the Maddox. Well, North Vietnam on the Maddox, which was located, I guess in the Gulf of Tonkin, really, but not in the North Vietnamese waters. So there was an attack. Well, right away, if the United States forces are attacked, what do you think should happen? Maybe write a little letter and say, hey, quit doing that. No, I don't think so. Our president just started sending forces over. So the Maddox was a U.S. destroyer, and it was temporarily stationed there. Then a little bit later, I think 3 days later, this was on the 2nd of August, but 3 days later, the U.S. destroyer Turner Joy and the Maddox reported that they both were under fire, and they were about 30 miles off of Vietnam, North Vietnam border. And this was on August 5th. Yeah, it was on August 5th. President Johnson immediately says, there's a thing, I think it's, any policeman in here, I think there's a principle of hot pursuit, is there not? You can temporarily cross a border if you're in hot pursuit. Well, President Johnson says, bomb the bases where these planes came, where these boats came from, torpedo boats. And by gosh, that's exactly what happened. So, then let's see what happens next here. President Johnson went to Congress and said said he would like an authorization to go out and chase these people down. So Congress voted on August 7th, 64. The timing is kind of important here. On a joint resolution, and those two words, joint resolution. Anything special about a joint resolution? Yeah, the joint resolution has to be presented to the president to become law. A concurrent resolution does not. So those words, joint resolution, pretty important here. Authorize the president to take all necessary steps. I wonder what that includes. Do you wonder? Well, that means exactly what it says, all necessary steps. The reason they were in hot pursuit, including the use of armed forces to assist so-and-so. And this was known formally as a joint resolution to take care of the situation. So Section 3 of that resolution stated that this resolution shall expire when the President shall deem the peace and security of the area is reasonably assured. Now, how long is that? You have any idea how long that would be? I don't see an end to it, do you? So, as we'll find a little bit later, Congress had second thoughts. I mean, they wrote out a blank check, didn't they? It really was literally a blank check. One, apply all necessary force to accomplish the issue, and two, take as long as you need. Interesting. So they started having second thoughts. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution says Congress shall have the power to declare wars. Declare wars. The executive power shall rest with the president, and he has authority over the Army and Navy and the militia when they're called into actual service. So Congress gives, in my opinion, this is just crystal clear, Congress gives only the power to declare a war. There's a big difference between declaring a war and conducting the war, or making a war, or continuing a war. So, there have only been 5 declared wars in our history, in the history of America. Did you know that? And here are the 5 wars. Only 5. But there have been literally scores of other cases where we have been engaged into hostilities. After an almost 10-year struggle between Johnson and subsequently President Nixon, Congress believed that the president was given too much authority in the Gulf of Tonkin. Remember what they said? When the president shall deem. The president hadn't deemed it yet, so it's been going on for 10 years. So on October 24th, the War's Power Resolution was vetoed by Nixon. When you're presenting something to the president, remember, he's got a couple of options there, doesn't he? He can just veto it, or he can pass it, or sign it, rather. So Congress did override the veto, and so we have what's referred to as the War Powers Resolution, and it became law. And it was enacted on November 7th in '73. So remember, that's 3 years after Javits formed this commission to study into the powers between the president and the Congress. So this thing's been going on for quite a while. Now, Section 5 of the War Powers Resolution, and you don't have to remember the sections, but the language is really, really important here. Section 5 says within 60 calendar days and so forth, whatever's the president shall terminate. What? This is Congress telling the president he should terminate any use of the forces given these conditions. Well, now wait a minute. Does that sound reasonable? The Congress is telling the commander-in-chief how to conduct the war. That don't sound right, does it? I don't think so. And Section 5C of that very same resolution says that within a certain time period, the forces should be removed if Congress directs by, and here is the big deal, concurrent resolution. If you know anything about the way Congress works, a concurrent resolution does not have to be presented for the president's signature. In other words, they just think that that becomes law without the president's signature. But the presentment clause in the Constitution requires that to become law, the resolution or whatever bill has to come over the president's desk, and he has an opportunity to veto it. So unconstitutional based on this, as we'll find out a little bit later. So Sections 5A, B, and C use the phrase, the president shall terminate the use of force, violates the commander-in-chief. And 5C, forces shall be removed and directs by concurrent resolution. 2 things there. One, they're telling the president when to remove. They're telling the president to remove the forces. And second of all, by concurrent resolution. Remember, the concurrent resolution doesn't have to be presented to the president, because what do you think the president will do when he gets the a joint resolution over his desk, vetoes it. And that's exactly what he did on a bill to fund the war. Well, anyway. So the language of 5C provides an escape from the presentment clause. And that was held, or that is argued that it's unconstitutional. Then the joint resolution, whenever it comes to the president, can either veto it or not, and he sure did in this particular case. So Nixon chose to continue activities in Cambodia and Laos, and Congress passed a congressional bill to cut off funds. What did Nixon do? Well, a bill for funds was a joint resolution, came right to the president, and he just vetoed it. And they didn't have enough votes to override that. Now, there have been a lot of undeclared, what we call wars, but that war is a kind of a tricky word to use. The Grenada conflict, I've been to Grenada, Panamanian conflict, Somalia, Afghanistan, Persian Gulf, and Iraqi war. So they were such a big scale, people use the term wars. Whether they were wars or not, you'll have to decide that for yourself. And they all had support of Congress, but none of them were declared. Remember, Congress has the power to declare war. So between 1975 and 2003, there have been 111 reports that are made under the War Powers Resolution. But all except one used the phrase, and in fact, all of the presidents have used exactly the same wording, except this one time, they used the phrase in accordance with rather than pursuant to. If they used the phrase pursuant to, that would be acknowledging that they're under that resolution. But they said in accordance with. Now, the Mayaguez incident caused letters of Congress to cite Section 4A1, which is the one that now, the second you cite that section of the War Powers Resolution, then you're under it. So, but none of those 110 other ones cited that section. So the incident didn't last very long. You know, the Mayaguez was an intelligence gathering ship, and that's why it was done. I received, Representative Henry Hyde sent me letters from 3 presidents. I couldn't get one, I couldn't get one from Clinton, don't know why. I got a letter from Bush, Jimmy Carter, and Gerald Ford. And here are the essence of these letters. In fact, this is the way the letters actually read. And so President Bush says, Dear Henry, so you're 100% correct in opposing the War Powers Resolution as unconstitutional infringement on the authority of the President. I hope you're successful in your activity. President Jimmy Carter, little short note, and this is the way they would do. I have a lot of copies of letters back and forth between the President and Congress. To Henry Hyde, I fully support your efforts to repeal the War Powers Resolution. And Gerald Ford, he's a fabulous president. I don't know, people didn't know him that well, but the more you got to know him, that guy was a good strategist. I share your views of the War Power Resolution as impractical, unconstitutional infringement on the authority of the President. I oppose the resolution as a member of the House, and he did. As President, I refuse to recognize it as constitutional limitation of the power of the Commander-in-Chief. So there you go. Some questions. Can Congress make or conduct war? I say no. They can declare war but not make or conduct war. Can Congress force the President to stop a war? Directly, no, but they can cut off funding, which can cause it to stop. But even that's tricky, because if they present it in a bill, then of course he'll veto the bill. Is declaration of war a meaningful term today? Now think about all of these. I have a list of every incursion into foreign waters or on foreign soil by American troops, and only that one was subjected to it, but none of them were declared. What's the division of power between Congress and the executive? Who knows? If you're the president, you think that the president has the power to conduct a war and to instigate a war, but Congress doesn't think so. Congress thinks that the president should come to Congress beforehand. What are the checks on the president's power? Money. Appropriations. Thank you. Any questions? Are there any questions at all? Been such a pleasure.
I have one question.
Okay.
On your slide, there's no mention of the Korean War.
Korean War, well, did I? That was one of the one. No, the Korean War was not a declared war.
The police action
No, I could go back. The only declared wars are the ones that we listed up there. Hold on, just take a second. Did I pass it up? Well, there? There you go. So the Korean War is not listed. There have only been 5 in the history of our country that have been declared.
We know that, yeah. That's why Truman called it a police action. Anybody who was in the Korean War would tell you different about being a police action in the war. Every time we come to schools today, they come to World War II, which is fine. They bypass Korea, right to Vietnam. That's what we call it, the forgotten war.
Yeah.
There's 54,000 Americans died in Korea. That was a police action.
Yeah.
That's why they never mentioned the Korean War.
Pity.
Anybody's over Korea will know what it was.
Yeah. Pity. Yeah.
Our troops have been involved in a lot of things under the auspices of the United Nations, and the Korean police action was an action by the United Nations.
I didn't want to take too long, and that was one area I really wanted to get into, and you know, it's a fascinating area. How about whenever the UN, we take action under the UN Charter? So that's quite another issue, and quite another pain for Congress and the argument between Congress and the President. Thank you so much, President Watts.
Another question here?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I need a little bit of clarification between declared war, fake war,
Yeah, declare says exactly what it's a declaration of war. Remember when President Roosevelt, when we were bombed in Pearl Harbor. In fact, I was just at Pearl Harbor a few weeks back, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and fabulous. But he did declare that. He declared it before Congress, and Congress actually declared it, a written document, Declaration of War. But these incursions, the Afghanistan and Iraqi wars, I don't know whether you call them a war, but they are wars just big, but no, it was not. It's not a war. Yeah.
How does the war get funded now? Through Congress?
Yeah, it just galls them to write a check for something that they didn't give permission to, and nobody asked their advice. The letter, the president would send some troops over, and just before they hit the shore, the president would call a congressional leader and say, "Hey, I got this raid that I'm going to do, and hold your watch." "Yeah, well, I'm doing it now," and that's that. And then what American would cut off money to people who are fighting for you? So that's the thing that they run into. Yeah.
If Congress can declare war, Is that big fighting?
Yes, it is. Oh, absolutely. It's when Congress declares war, it'll come out of a joint resolution. Yeah. That's presented to the president, of course. Yeah.
Sir, is there any difference in the care that the soldiers have when they come back from a war or undeclared war?
Well, that's another little wrinkle they're trying now. I think they've passed, did they not? I haven't kept up with it. I think they've passed a provision to increase the GI Bill for people in Iraq. Yeah, and they should. I just wonder what kind of price tag you put on a blown off arm or a leg for a 20-year-old person. Can you imagine? Thank you, President Watt.
Yes, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We learned a lot. It's going to be a lot different than a Build-A-Bear next month. Thanks again, Dr. Westerfield. I'm on the Jefferson County Veterans Memorial Committee, and you know we have our memorial down here on college property, and we've lost a couple of Jefferson County residents recently, as you know, to the war in Iraq. And a discussion amongst the members of the committee is under what war do we post them? What do we call it? And I believe that we're still researching it, but as we understand it, it's going to be called the War on Global Terrorism. So, is anybody else here involved in that? Anyway, it's not the Gulf War or Iraq War, it's the War on Global Terrorism, and I think that probably would cover us for whatever else might transpire. Okay, an announcement. Again, October the 10th is the next speaker series, but before that, on September the 13th, from 10 in the morning until 8 at night, we will have what is amounted to our second annual balloon glow at the Festus Airport. And Carol Klein has put in a lot of work on that, and I think the number of balloons is up to 12, is that correct? Last year we only had a few, but we had 12. There's going to be all kinds of vendors and booths there, and we'll be raffling off one of those little Vespa scooters, and it should be an exciting time. Last year we didn't know what to expect, and we ended up with 5,000 or 6,000 people. This year we've done a lot of advertising, as you probably know and heard. So we have our police academy cadets out there to help direct traffic, and also shouldn't be inconvenient for you, and should be a really good time. So it's going to be food and drinks. So please come. It's free, and we really appreciate your taking an interest in college activities.